Hi, I'm KCHOI. Welcome back to my channel. It's a very gloomy, rainy day in New York, so today we're going to be doing a cozy Q&A. I posted on my Instagram story asking you to submit questions about consulting, career, marriage, living in New York. So I've got lots of questions covering a range of topics that I'll be answering today. I just want to give a quick plug to two fun little projects I was involved with recently. So the first one was a collaboration with Fondest. It's an Instagram account and networking group run by a consultant in Canada named Tamara, and it really focuses on providing helpful advice for women who want to get into consulting from women in consulting. So I answered a few questions and did a little Instagram takeover, so I'll link that in the description box. And the second thing I wanted to share is that I was on a podcast. It's called Super Bloom, and I was interviewed by Madeline, who is a rising senior at Princeton University, and this podcast is a bit of a passion project of hers and her friend, and they interview women in lots of different fields to provide advice and guidance for students and recent graduates as they embark on their career journey. So I'll also link that podcast episode down below, especially if you like these types of Q&As where I answer some of your consulting and career related questions. So please check that out and support these super talented young women and show them some love. Okay, the first question is, I want to get into consulting, but I don't know where to start. Do I just jump into the applying process? I'm not sure how much research or prep or context you already have, but I wouldn't say to just jump into the application right away. But first, I would do some more research by talking to people who are in consulting, who are in the specific role that you want to apply to, or who work at that firm. It's obviously helpful to look at the job description, but it's much more helpful to actually hear about a role from someone who's in it or someone who's familiar with it. And if you don't have anybody in your direct network, then there are still other resources where you can find more information about consulting. For example, the Fondest Instagram account that has different posts all about different fields of consulting. There's also Steph and Ben's YouTube channel, who have both been on my channel before, and they have videos about different fields of consulting as well. You'll also want to make sure you take the time to tailor your resume and your cover letter before you just go ahead and start applying to different roles. So you want to make it stand out and also be specific to the role and the firm that you're applying to. But definitely, if you have no idea where to start, just start having some conversations and asking questions so that you can learn more about consulting, and it might open your eyes to what you actually want to do. So you might think that you want to go into strategy or management consulting, but maybe you'll talk to some people and learn that tech consulting is more for you. So you'll never know until you ask and start having those conversations. Next question is, I'm suffering right now with my job. How do you deal or heal yourself when you're having a hard time? I have been there with hating my job and just dreading going to work in the morning, looking forward to the weekend. There was a point where I was so sad even when it was Saturday, because then I knew the next day was Sunday, and Sundays are the worst because then you start start work the next day. What helped me, and this is of course more so in hindsight, but what helped me was just knowing that it wasn't going to be permanent, and I knew that if I really wanted to, I could get out of my job situation at the time or the career path, but I just had to make a plan for it, and it wasn't going to happen overnight. I knew the steps that I wanted to take, and so I just looked forward to those small milestones that got me to the big steps that I needed to make the change in my career. I'm also very lucky that I had good work friends at all of the different jobs that I worked at, and they were the only thing that I would look forward to or be happy about with my job. And so if you're able to, make those connections, that also can help you get through that hard period of your life when it comes to your career. I have a couple of questions asking why I moved to New York and how I knew it was the right time to move to New York, especially during the pandemic. And it's simply because my husband is based in New York, and although we have been working remotely for the past 6, 7, 8 months or so, and we were actually both in LA for 6 months of it. Both of our companies work on Eastern time, and so back when we were in LA over the summer, it was really hard to keep working on Eastern time while we were living on Pacific time. It meant a lot of early mornings that was just not sustainable. So we knew that in the short term we couldn't stay in LA With Ann Arbor, which is where I was previously, there isn't too much for us there, although it is much more affordable, but we just don't really have a big network outside of my work. And then in New York, we both have friends in New York, and then my husband has already been based in New York, and we also just want to be able to live here together while we are in our late 20s, early 30s, before we have kids, because I think this is really the only opportunity to do so. I've also never lived in New York, but I love New York and have visited countless times, so I just wanted the opportunity to live here. It's obviously not the ideal time to experience New York because of COVID and all the necessary restrictions, and I'll touch on this in my apartment hunting video that will be coming soon. We did get a good deal on our apartment because of all of the vacancies and all the people who are leaving New York right now and leaving many empty apartments. How did you improve/develop your communication skills to be more effective? Definitely takes practice, and I've been in the working field, since 2013 when I graduated college, so it has been a while now. A couple of tips for workplace communication, in my opinion, are that talking on the phone is so much better than talking over email. When you're exchanging emails and it gets to the point where you're going back and forth like more than 3 times, then it's time to pick up the phone. It's so much more efficient that way. You can squash out any confusion right then and there, and what might have been 5 emails could be a 5-minute conversation. If you're talking about communicating in the sense of presenting or facilitating a meeting, always think about having an agenda. You want to take people along on the journey with you. You don't want them to be lost. Set their expectations for what's going to be covered in the time that you're facilitating or presenting, and that way they know where and when to focus. A few people asked about the best thing about being married. Is marriage what you expected, and how the transition has been in general? And overall, it's honestly been so great, and I mentioned this in my relationship wine talk video that I did with my friend Megan, but my husband and I have been long distance for half of our relationship. We've been dating since 2012, so it'll be 8 years this year. And about 4 of those years were long distance. So even just living in the same city, and then on top of that, living together has been great. I wasn't sure how it was going to be, especially with both of us working from home and us just constantly being together, but I haven't really noticed anything that's negative about it. In fact, I'm very curious what it'll be like when we ultimately do start commuting again, or traveling for work, and we're not together every single day of the week. I feel like that's actually gonna be the weirder, bigger transition for us. I don't think there's anything too difficult about living together so far. I know that we're going to face challenges and issues for sure. It's more just generic things like habits we have in terms of the way that we organize or keep things in the apartment, but honestly, I think we've both been very thoughtful and mindful of the other person, and so it's been nothing but amazing so far. How lost were you after graduating from Cal, from a confused Cal upperclassman? I was pretty lost. I think lost is a good way to put it. I did a video about things that I wish I had known once I graduated from college, so I'll link that in the description box. But when I graduated, I was working at an unpaid internship. It was really fun, and it was a very cool experience because it was a fashion internship, and I was doing lots of events and red carpet stuff, but it was kind of a toxic work environment, and I was just like, why am I dealing with this when I have a degree? I'm very capable. How did I end up in this situation? That was just the first few months out of college, but even a year or so out of college, I was still a little bit lost, and that's when I started to look into switching from PR into consulting. So I think if you feel lost, it's okay, you're not alone, and you will ultimately find what it is that you enjoy and that you're good at. I always say this, and it's easier said than done, and I have to remind myself of it constantly, but don't compare yourself to others and where they're at after college or even right now. Just focus on yourself. Any tips on how to balance career and prepare for a test? GRE, GMAT, LSAT. I actually have a video about how I studied for the GRE, so I think that'll probably be the most comprehensive for you. But at a high level, I just made sure to have scheduled what I was going to study on each day of the week, and then I made sure to take lots of practice tests over the weekend and simulate the actual test environment. It's going to be tiring because if you're working full-time, you've only got the evenings to study, and it takes a lot of discipline. But if you section it all out and you plan everything, have it all written down, then that'll be a huge help for you. Do consulting companies limit candidates' majors when they're hiring? I can't speak for all consulting firms, but from what I know, from what I've observed and heard, is that it doesn't matter what your major is, it doesn't matter what you studied, it's all about the experience that you have and how you're going to be able to apply it to your role. Now, if you're coming straight from undergrad, I would say that business majors, of course, tend to have an advantage, mostly because they just know more about the opportunities for recruiting for different consulting firms. They're usually in some sort of business or consulting club, and so they find out about recruiting dates and requirements and all of that. But regardless of your major, you can join those extracurriculars as well if you know that that's what you want to get into. And I've also heard that if you have a quote-unquote non-conventional background for a consultant, that actually helps you stand out a bit more because you can bring something else to the table. So don't worry too much about your major, but think about the extracurriculars that you can get involved in. And if you do have work experience, think about how that can apply to the skills that are required to be a consultant. How do you cope with moving, like when you were studying in London and now in NYC? When I moved to London, I feel like I really put myself out there to expand my network. So I made friends with the people who lived on my floor in my dorm. I, of course, met a bunch of people through my program, but outside of those two, I also joined a swim team. I went to church. I also like to just settle in really quickly. So it's been, I think, like exactly a month now since we've moved, and we've pretty much fully settled into our apartment. There isn't really anything that's missing in terms of our necessities. You know how when you first move in to a place, you're like, oh, I don't have a trash can, or I don't have like enough towels or things like that. I made sure that we took care of those things early on, and that I think helps you settle in and just feel more at home. My friend Kathy, who is British, asked me a few fun questions related to the UK. So what's your favorite British cultural tradition or British word, and what are your fondest memories of the UK? Fondest memories are really just all the people that I met, and there are people who are from the UK but also from lots of other places around the world. I love how London specifically is very global, and so I have friends who honestly are in like almost all the continents now, so that was a great experience just to be able to meet people, expand my bubble and my world a little bit. It's been a while since I was living in the UK, so I'm finding it difficult to think of what my favorite British tradition or word is. I did love that whenever the weather was just like a tad nice, everybody would be outside and in such a great mood. I loved in the summers when the days would be really long and we'd just go to the pub with friends and enjoy Pim's Cup and walk along the canal in London. And I also miss drinking tea every day and having that as part of my routine, because once I moved away from England, I just did not drink as much tea, or at least not a lot of black tea with milk, but there's just something so cozy about it, and it can work as a morning pick-me-up or like a nightcap, like relaxation drink. So appreciating and enjoying when the weather is nice and enjoying a nice cuppa. Those are all the questions I'm going to answer today. Thanks so much for submitting them, and be sure to follow me on Instagram so you can see whenever I have more Q&A submissions going on. Hope you're all staying healthy out there, and as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.